Imagine walking into a desert, no map, no water bottle, no phone, just endless sand stretching to the horizon in every direction. The sun is so hot the ground burns your feet. There's no shade anywhere, and you're not alone. You're carrying a baby. Your children are walking beside you, already thirsty, already tired. Now imagine doing this not for a day, not for a week, but for hundreds of miles, for months. This is exactly what your ancestors did, again and again for tens of thousands of years. Ancient humans crossed some of the most brutal deserts on Earth with their entire families, with no technology, no stored water, and no guarantee they'd survive. Most people assume they must have died in huge numbers. And many did. Enough survived that you're here today. So how did they do it? How did a mother with a baby cross a desert that would kill a modern human in just 2 or 3 days? The answer will completely change how you see your own ancestors. Let's start with the biggest killer: water. Or rather, the lack of it. A human body can survive weeks without food. But without water, in desert heat, you have about 2 to 3 days before your organs start shutting down. In extreme heat, it can be even less. Ancient humans knew this, not from books, but from watching people die. They understood water was everything. So how did they find it in a place that looks completely dry? The answer is that the desert is never as empty as it looks, and ancient humans could read it like a book. They watched animals. Every animal in a desert knows where water is. Ancient people followed birds in the early morning and evening, because birds fly toward water at dawn and dusk. They followed the tracks of large animals, knowing they'd eventually lead to a hidden water source. Watched where insects gathered. A swarm of bees almost always means water is within a few miles. They read the land itself. Ancient humans knew that water collects at the base of certain rocks, in the bends of dry riverbeds, and under specific types of sand. Learned to dig in the lowest points of dried-up streams, where water still sat just below the surface. In some deserts, people dug down and found water hiding under what looked like completely dry ground. They knew which plants held water. Certain desert roots, dug up and squeezed, released drinkable liquid. Some plants store water in their stems. Ancient people memorized dozens of these, passing the knowledge from parent to child, generation after generation. And here's something incredible. In the Kalahari Desert, sand people developed a technique of collecting morning dew and even sucking water up from underground through long, hollow reeds, storing it in ostrich eggshells. An ostrich eggshell can hold about a liter of water. They would fill dozens of them, seal them with grass, bury them along their routes, creating hidden water stations across the desert that they could return to later. Think about that. They built a supply network across a desert, using eggshells, with no writing to record where they buried them. They just remembered. Every location held in memory passed down through stories, but finding water was only half the battle. You also had to carry it, and ancient humans became masters of this too. They used ostrich eggshells as canteens, drilling a small hole in the top. We used the stomachs and bladders of animals as water skins, which could hold several liters. They made bags out of animal hide, sealed with fat, that kept water cool even in blazing heat. A family on the move would carry these water containers carefully, rationing every single sip, and they didn't drink whenever they were thirsty. They drank on a schedule, small amounts at the right times, to make the water last. Children were given water first. Adults drank less, pushing their own bodies to the limit so their kids would survive. This wasn't written down anywhere. It was just understood. The next generation comes first. Now, let's talk about the heat itself, because the sun in a desert isn't just uncomfortable. It's lethal. Ancient humans figured out something modern desert travelers still rely on today. Don't travel during the day. They walked at night, under the cool desert night, guided by the stars. Families would cover long distances while the temperature was survivable. During the brutal heat of midday, they rested in whatever shade they could find, under rock overhangs, in the shadow of large boulders, or in shelters they built from branches and hides. Dug shallow pits in the cooler sand below the surface and lay in them to escape the heat. They moved with the rhythm of the desert, not against it. This single strategy, traveling by night and resting by day, is probably what saved more lives than anything else. Walking at night in a featureless desert raises a huge question. How did they not get lost? No roads, no signs, no compass, just sand in every direction. The answer is the sky. Ancient humans were expert navigators, and the stars were their map. Memorized the patterns of the stars and how they moved across the sky through the seasons. They knew which star stayed fixed in the north. They used the position of the rising and setting sun. They read the shape of sand dunes, which are formed by consistent winds and often point in reliable directions. They noticed distant mountains, the color of the sand, the type of plants, all tiny clues that told them exactly where they were and where to go. Some ancient groups could navigate hundreds of miles across open desert and arrive precisely at a small waterhole they had never personally seen, guided only by directions passed down through generations of stories and songs. In parts of Australia, Aboriginal people developed songlines, which were essentially sung maps, describing the exact path across the land through a song. Sing the song, follow the landmarks it describes, and you arrive at your destination. A GPS made of music, thousands of years before satellites. Let's talk about the hardest part. The children crossing a desert as an adult is brutal enough, but ancient humans did it while pregnant, while nursing, and while carrying toddlers who couldn't walk far. How did the children survive? Babies were carried in slings made of animal hide, held close to the mother's body, kept in shade under her own shadow as she walked. Older children were taught to conserve energy, to walk in the cooler early morning, to rest during the heat. The whole group moved at the pace of its weakest member, because leaving anyone behind meant losing part of the tribe's future. Food was scarce, so they ate whatever the desert offered. Insects, which are packed with protein and fat, roots and tubers dug from the ground. Small reptiles and animals hunted along the way. Eggs when they found nests. Seeds and hardy desert plants. Nothing was wasted. A single successful hunt could feed a family for days, and every scrap was shared. And through all of this, the tribe stayed together. They sang. They told stories to keep the children calm and to pass the time. They encouraged each other through exhaustion. The journey wasn't just physical survival. It was emotional survival, held together by human connection. Zoom out for a moment and think about what this really means. The reason humans are spread across the entire planet today, on every continent, in every environment, is because of these desert crossings. Our ancestors walked out of Africa and kept walking across deserts, mountains, and plains for tens of thousands of years. The famous migration out of Africa required crossing harsh, dry landscapes with no roads and no supplies. Families did this, children did this, and they made it. Modern DNA studies can actually trace these ancient journeys. The path your ancestors took across the deserts of the world is written into your genes right now. Every person alive today is descended from travelers who crossed impossible landscapes and survived. Next time you complain about a long car ride or feel tired walking a few blocks in the heat, remember this. Somewhere in your family tree is a mother who crossed hundreds of miles of burning desert on foot, carrying a baby, rationing water by the sip, navigating by the stars, refusing to stop. She didn't have a map. She didn't have supplies. She didn't even know for certain that she'd survive. But she kept walking. And because she did, you are here. They weren't just survivors. They were explorers, navigators, and some of the toughest human beings who have ever lived. And their blood runs in every single one of us.